I'm delighted to have in the studio today Ambassador Pankaj Saran, convener of NatStrat, an independent, not-for-profit center for research on strategic and security issues. Ambassador Saran has also been India's Deputy National Security Advisor. Welcome, Ambassador Saran, once again to the conversation on India-France ties and the significance of the French President Emmanuel Macron's recently concluded two-day state visit to India. During the state visit of the President of the French Republic, Emmanuel Macron, India and France signed agreements in various sectors including defense, space exploration, civil aviation, science and technology, health, public administration and urban development, besides announcing cooperation in several areas including UPI, renewable energy and visa issues. In 2023, India and France sealed several agreements to mark 25 years of strategic partnership and unveiled the Horizon 2047 roadmap following Prime Minister Narendra Modi's participation in the Bastille Day celebrations last year in July. President Emmanuel Macron is the sixth French president to have been invited as chief guest for India's Republic Day celebrations. India and France have traditionally enjoyed very good and cordial relations. France was the first country with which India entered into an agreement on civil nuclear cooperation following the waiver given by the Nuclear Suppliers Group. I'll now proceed to ask you a few questions which are a child's play, as always, for you to answer. As I just said, the French president was the chief guest on our Republic Day celebration. There was a lot of substance and ceremony to his visit. How would you elaborate upon the key outcomes of the visit, which had these two takeaways? Many takeaways, but which had two very pronounced elements of ceremony and substance. As I just said, the memorandum of agreement between Tata Advanced System Limited and Airbus to set up an assembly line for H-125 helicopters in India has evoked immense interest. It is understood that the defense space agreement that could see the two countries launch military satellites with offensive and defensive capabilities is not just ambitious but unprecedented. What is your opinion on this?
Yeah, thank you. Firstly, Tripti, for inviting me to the show. Obviously, the visit is over, the Republic Day celebrations are over, and we are now charged with the responsibility of examining the outcomes of the visit. I would just say straight away that the very fact that he visited India was a reflection of the very special relationship that exists between India and France, and the fact that this relationship has grown from strength to strength in the last many years. So it has shown a lot of consistency, and it has shown a lot of resilience, and it has shown a lot of depth in terms of areas of cooperation. And all this came to rest with this current visit. And as you said, it was the sixth time that a French president was invited for the Republic Day. So the relationship with France has actually become very, very, in a sense,
robust.
Deep and robust. And it transcends all sectors, defense, intelligence, space, maritime, science and technology, going right up to culture, sports, education, people to people. So it's a full universe of cooperation, and the amazing thing about the relationship is that there is a great buy-in from both leaders, from both countries, and from both public opinions, that we really do not have any serious or unbridgeable differences between us.
Right. Please allow me to attempt reading in French what President Macron said to contribute a special French flavor to our conversation. C'est à la fois un honneur et une marque d'amitié d'être invité en Inde à l'occasion de sa fête nationale. Je viens célébrer et consolider notre partenariat d'exception. Première étape, rapprocher nos jeunesses. Nous avons tant à faire ensemble. This translates to, it is both an honor and a mark of friendship to be invited to India on the occasion of its National Day. I come to celebrate and consolidate our exceptional partnership. First step, bringing our youth together. We have so much to do together. How would you interpret the significance of the French president's visit to the Dargah of the Sufi saint Khwaja Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia, a 700-year-old shrine in South Delhi?
Yeah, I think that was quite interesting. The fact is that on the one hand, it represents his belief and his it's a testimony to India's pluralism, multiculturalism and multi-religious society. And on the other, it also shows that France is equally invested in building such a society for itself in its own country. And there's a huge population in France of French citizens who actually have come from the Maghreb to France to settle down. Basically Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia and a few other countries of that region who have now become part and parcel of French life. That region, the Maghreb itself, is Sunni Muslims with a very heavy influence of Sufism and syncretic culture. So in that sense, paradoxically, France, despite being a European country, is very sensitive to this whole concept of a syncretic culture and the need to integrate different ethnicities, religious groups, languages into a nation. And this is exactly what India is all about. So his visit, I think, was both meant as a message to his own nationality, his own nation, his own country, his own countrymen, as well as to the people in India, that the future of the world actually lies in integration, in peaceful coexistence, in celebrating diversity, but yet maintaining a common nationality and a common identity. So all in all, I think it was very interesting, and I think it's good both for France and for India that we promote this kind of a narrative in our countries.
So it carries a very special message.
It carries a message for sure, both for the French audience and for the Indian audience. And the fact that, he took time off and to go and spend time here indicates that he also has an equal desire to generate this kind of integration in his own country. Because as I said, I mean, there is, I think almost 5 million or 5% rather of the French population is of Muslim ethnicity or descent.
And they're deeply multicultural also.
So France is deeply multicultural, it's multi-ethnic, it's in all senses. So India can actually serve as a very good example to France and vice versa of how to build a nation of so much complexity and diversity. And of course, I think we are far more complex and diverse than France is. But nevertheless, this is an area where, this is a relatively new area which we are now talking about, where we can actually exchange experiences, cooperate, set good examples for each other.
The French president during his visit also spelled out a very ambitious target of having 30,000 Indian students in France by 2030. He said that France is creating international classes to allow students who do not necessarily speak French to join universities in France, because I think this was a discouraging factor. He also talked of developing the network of Alliance Française with new centers to learn French. To what extent do you think this initiative on strengthening educational links contribute to India-France ties?
I think they're important, because India is actually, at the end of the day, a huge source of students, international students for the entire world. But most of our traffic has been basically to the English-speaking world. And France occupies still, despite all these efforts, only a small proportion of, in terms of the number of Indian students traveling overseas. So the efforts to increase awareness of France, to teach French and to actually expose Indian students to French educational institutions, etc., is good. But I mean, at the end of the day, I still think the English-speaking world is going to be far more dominant in terms of the exchanges at the student level. But the fact is that because of the caliber and the quality of the Indian students, they will always be an asset for France. And it's also good for us to diversify our interface with the rest of the world, going beyond the English-speaking world. And so all these initiatives are actually very good. If they allow our students and our boys and girls to get good education, to contribute to maybe not just France but Europe as a whole, that's really good because there is a lot that we can actually contribute to. And it's a two-way street. So, you get your best brains there, they contribute there, and then they also send back a lot of the learned wisdom and experience back to India. And this is good because this is part of India's, I would say, growing interface and integration with the entire world, cutting across languages, regions, cultures.
I think worldwide there is increasing realization that catching people young and getting the youth to study in universities can go a long way in not just harnessing the optimum potential of human resources from other countries. And we are also seeing a lot of mobility partnership agreements with other countries also. And do you think education is a very key component in strengthening diplomatic ties?
It is, but I would look at it from the Indian point of view. I mean, today if you have this vast demographic dividend of young people in India, there is no doubt that the primary need is to educate and skill and make them, employable and productive citizens of the country.
Right.
And we do that for our own national interest because the pool is so large, the numbers are so large that nothing is going to be enough to educate and train. We have huge domestic efforts on nationwide, states, the center. I mean, here we're talking of literally hundreds of millions of youth. So if France can contribute and if we can expose our children to, let's say, the cutting edge of science, of technology, of research in France, that's really going to benefit us. And so I think it's really mutually advantageous for both countries. And I feel that in the coming years, we will see a huge amount of focus by the Indian government and by the states also on precisely this aspect of nation building, which is education, training, skill development.
Right.
And nothing is going to be enough because we need so much of it, and we need it now. And we need it in all areas because that's the only way you can sustain a country or an economy to grow at 7% or more per year for the next 10 years.
So overall, how do you look at his visit?
As I said, I think they've just gone from strength to strength. They built on very strong foundations. When you cooperate with a country in sensitive technologies, in crucial areas like defense or space or nuclear or defense research, you do this only when you have reached a certain minimum level of trust and confidence in each other. And I think we have reached that. And so this is the next step. And therefore all these agreements, particularly on defense industrial cooperation, on space and other similar areas, and these other initiatives to actually create manufacturing capabilities in India using French technology and the French willingness to part with this technology, whether it is, let's say, assembly or hopefully later on the building of helicopters, civilian helicopters, or the building of engines, aircraft engines like the Safran, or defense space. These are all, hardcore areas which directly go to increasing your hard strength, hard national strength.
Even launching military satellites.
Well, yes, that's what I've heard. But these are all very, very concrete areas of cooperation and which will have far-reaching effects on the way we develop our own preparedness.
Talking of trade ties between India and France, we've seen that they've witnessed steady growth, and France has emerged as the 11th largest investor in India. What more can be done to tap optimum potential in trade in terms of India also stepping up the number of companies it has in France? I think France has a sizable number of companies in India.
Yeah, I saw that they've also decided to open a new consulate in Marseille, and
Right.
they are going to open a new consulate in Hyderabad.
Hyderabad.
So obviously they're looking. We want more French investment. I mean, that's absolutely clear, and we are getting it in aerospace, in some aspects of nuclear energy, in some aspects of defense technologies. We basically want more French investment, and we want it in such a way that they actually generate jobs in India. And I think this is happening in many fields, in automobiles, in engineering, and now that we've opened, for example, our space sector, there's actually an agreement now between the NSIL of India and its French counterparts, where you are looking at cooperation in the space sector at the level of startups. For me, very interestingly, also is the French usage of the UPI, the United Payments Interface, which now has enabled Indians to use rupees for transactions in France. So I think the next big, game is actually going to be digital technologies. It's going to be artificial intelligence, again on which there is a lot of reference in the joint statement. And so these are niche areas of technology. I mean, they talked about the One Future Alliance, again related to this. If I may, I think I was also very, very interested and impressed with another huge chunk of cooperation identified, which was related to climate change and the environment. And it's very interesting that the two countries are actually, for example, have agreed to cooperate on drafting an internationally legally binding treaty or an instrument on controlling or banning plastic pollution. And then there are many other references to the Oceans Conference, to the next COP on climate change, to cooperating on, on the whole. I mean, that's of course a different area, but in terms of the Indo-Pacific and on the maritime domain, these are new areas, very exciting, and it just shows actually that given the political will, you can go very far.
Right, and I think when you talk of UPI, Modi ji and the French President had tea at a tea stall in Jaipur, where he used the UPI, and I think he was thoroughly impressed, and he made a mention of it, that he will not forget this chai. And chai anyway is very universally, globally synonymous with our Prime Minister now. So I think that's very interesting dimension also, is that the way we've discussed this earlier also in our previous discussions, but the way the Prime Minister has decentralized diplomacy, it's not just people coming to Delhi and having a fixed itinerary, it's all over the place. Whether it was President Xi Jinping, who came in 2014 and the Jhulawala image is still etched in our minds forever, or whether it is kite flying by other dignitaries, he does things in a very different way, or whether it's the Philosopher's Alley, I think that was in Japan. So the itineraries have become very, very interesting now. And of course, we remember that when Bill Clinton came to India, the handshake to the rural women, and so I think leaders are not from the time you did diplomacy and you trained to be a diplomat. Things have changed so much, haven't they? It's not just the chief of protocol having the first handshake and having a very, very fixed itinerary. Leaders are not just now sticking to what they're asked to stick to. They are going their own way, and there is a spontaneity about diplomacy.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I think what has happened is that with massive improvements and rapid developments in technology and instant communication, the question which used to be asked was that is diplomacy dead? Because now you can communicate using all kinds of means of technology and communication. Maybe you don't actually need to have a physical meeting, and therefore, what is then the role of personal diplomacy, personal relationships, and personal chemistry? So all these images and all these initiatives actually go to show that despite all of this and despite all of the technology at your disposal, personal initiatives, relationships and initiatives matter hugely.
Right.
To build rapport, to build trust, and to build what at the end of the day are human relationships. Of course, countries' interests remain and they are defined in their own way. But there is a lot to be said about how you can achieve those same interests and objectives through better interpersonal relationships. And I think Prime Minister Modi has taken this whole genre of diplomacy to another level altogether.
Different bandwidth.
Where he is actually also leveraging these visits to showcase India in all its diversity and in all its accomplishments. So when you take leaders such as President Macron or other global leaders outside Delhi to different parts of India, you are basically, fulfilling many different objectives. Number one, you're actually giving a stake to the local people and the local administration, the state government, in the success of the visit. You're actually educating them about the relevance of foreign policy to their lives, to their day-to-day lives.
Right.
And then you are exposing Indian culture and diversity and the strength of India's democratic traditions, India's federation to the rest of the world, and giving everyone a kind of an overview of the scale and expanse of India, where this figure of 1.4 billion people is not just a number on a piece of paper,
Right.
but it's actually for real. And so, you are, and then of course, what you are also doing is making a special gesture to your guest, saying that, look, I am doing something out of the way for you. I'm not just doing bare minimum protocol of bringing you to the capital.
Right.
In fact, a lot of this has been done in the past by many leaders, and if you would go through the history of diplomacy and big summits, you will actually find that a lot of the historical milestone summits that have defined global history have taken place outside of the capitals of countries,
I remember
in different cities. And
I remember the SAARC summits had a concept of retreat, no?
yeah,
Something
well,
like
you
that.
had a retreat. I mean, you have the famous retreat resorts that have been used repeatedly by US presidents, successive. I mean, remember you had the Yalta conference, the Potsdam conference. All these were big events which defined contemporary history, and they were all held outside the capital. I mean, just last year a year before you had the Bali summit.
Right.
It was not in Jakarta. So, everyone uses these occasions to come out with certain different kind of initiatives and, give the same event a different flavor, a different meaning. And then that name of the city or the region then gets chronicled in history forever.
Right.
I mean, there are so many different examples. I mean, if you look at, for example, the Agra summit between India and Pakistan, well, it was in Agra, and Agra went down in history as the venue for this summit. Of course, it was failed, but nevertheless.
Everybody was quibbling over commas and full stops.
Yeah, but the point is that when you take summitry outside of the capital, then it's an excellent way to achieve your own diplomatic goals.
Ambassador Saran, you made a passing mention of trust that exists between the two countries, and I don't think there is an iota of doubt that I have in my mind about any any trust deficit between the two countries. And I'd like to take you to this aspect that you mentioned in passing, but the two countries have agreed to intensify their cooperation in the Southwest Indian Ocean, building on the joint surveillance missions carried out from French La Réunion in 2020 and 2022. And so how do you look at this? How do you think they will progress on this?
So another interesting, very, very interesting and a relatively well-established area of cooperation between India and France. I mean, the Mozambique Channel, the east coast of Africa, and the Southwest Indian Ocean are all areas where India and France have actually worked together. We have had the Indian Navy P8I surveillance aircraft patrols that have operated out of Reunion Island. We actually have discussed cooperation, and I read again that they have agreed to do a joint project in Senegal. So, from a maritime perspective, India and France actually can do a lot in that region. Obviously, because of France's island territories, they have a huge amount of EEZ and maritime space and a vast Indo-Pacific area or a region. It is therefore a maritime power. So is India. So I am quite encouraged by these decisions, and which again, as you said, go to the issue of trust, because once you start, and they're also, by the way, discussion and reference to not just our exercises with the three wings of the armed forces, but there's even discussion about probably holding a trilateral exercise. So, what it appears to me is that you're actually strengthening your cooperation. And, relevant to our earlier point of discussion, interestingly, they have also decided to actually hold annual summits. This is interesting because we did not have this system officially documented. Now there is this agreement to actually have annual summits. We had these with very few countries, like we had it with Japan, with Russia, perhaps with Germany, I'm not sure, but now with France. And you normally do not get into these arrangements unless and until you have a really special relationship. So there is something new that has happened in this visit in terms of the convergence and the intent to make it even stronger, which is very interesting.
So thank you so much, Ambassador Saran, for giving us such an encouraging picture of the vibrant ties that India and France enjoy. And inshallah, I wish that the picture that you have painted actually becomes very real in times to come. Merci encore, monsieur.
Thank you so much. Thank you.